Hello and welcome, everybody. Happy Friday, welcome to another weekend, but first, another Subsector Spotlight brought to you by Sectors Made Simple. It's a pleasure to be here with you all as we move towards the end of October. Now, before we get into today's Subsector Spotlight, I want to share a little bit of information with you all. Over November, you guys won't get to see me much for the members webinars because we're lucky enough to have the Girasoles joining us, where each one of them will be presenting a different topic. This past Friday, we got to learn about Mint, an amazing resource for investors and budgeters alike, something for everyone. And Vero walks us through it in amazing detail. It is an amazing class, so if you have access to it, I highly recommend you go and take a look at it. And you join us next Tuesday for Myra's class. But for the free classes in November, I have some extra special topics planned for all of you. We're going to be talking a lot about technology and a lot around preparing for the holidays. The holidays are going to bring with it quite a bit in terms of spending, both for ourselves but also for others. And whether you realize it or not, you've probably already done a little bit of spending in this holiday season because the first holiday coming up is Halloween. Halloween, we buy a lot of candy. We also buy a lot of decorations. Hopefully everyone already has many of the decorations, but for us, we had to buy a bunch. So that involved a lot of time at department stores, Target, and the such to buy all of our lights, all of our decorations, but most importantly, a lot of candy. But it made me think, the holidays is an amazing time for us, but it's also a great time for some industries. The biggest industry that benefits from the holiday season is the department store industry. So I wanted to talk about that before we got into the holidays and share some insight and some thoughts about the department store industry and the retail industry. And that's what today's Subsector Spotlight is all about. We're going to take a look at department stores. We're going to extend it a little bit beyond just department stores and look at retail as well. Compare it to online retail, which in 2020, due to certain world circumstances, gave incredible increases to the value and the necessity of online retail. But as things opened back up, department stores have enjoyed quite a bit of growth. So all of this and more in today's Subsector Spotlight. So I hope everyone is along and ready for the ride. Before we get started, I want to say hello to everyone we have with us today live in the webinar. As always, these webinars are recorded every Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. East Coast Time, right here on our YouTube channel, Sectors Made Simple. If you want to be notified about the upcoming webinars, see that red little subscribe button below the video? Click it and it'll turn gray, and then you'll get reminders about when we go live with these sessions. So, hello to Emelida, Blanca, Isabel, Hermila, Kike, Felix, Yara, Meli, my mother, Eddie, Blaze, Alejandro, Chela, Kike, Norma, Elizabeth, Erika, Zamada, Laura, Andrew, Lucia, WC, Sarah, Lupe, Javier, Minerva, Wilton. Great to see you all. I apologize if I missed your name. It's great to have you all with us as we start today's topic, department stores and the department store industry. Quick disclaimer, we're going to talk a little bit about finances. We're going to talk a little bit about some stocks. These stocks are not investment suggestions, they're not investment ideas or encouragements. It's simply for educational purposes. All of this information was collected as recently as I could to make sure the information is correct, but as always, past results can never guarantee future performance, so take everything today as educational resources, not as financial advice. So let's get started with what is the department store industry. Usually you hear department store. Very rarely do you hear department store industry. And one of the reasons is because it's pretty small. But the department store industry is a subsector of the consumer discretionary or consumer cyclical sector. There are very few companies that actually fall into this industry. But these companies have a massive, massive influence on our society because they're huge companies. FinViz only tracks 5 department stores in the department store industry. But the smallest of these companies has still over $1 billion in market capitalization or company value. And that company is not even based in the United States. For those that are based in the US, the smallest has about $4.2 billion in revenue, while the largest has $7.92 billion in market capitalization. We are talking huge, huge companies. But again, department stores is a very small group, but often department stores will get squished in with a bunch of other industries, and the main one is going to be retail. Oftentimes, it'll get looped in with retail, apparel retail, luxury goods, things like that, where department stores, yeah, they are jewelers. Yes, they do luxury goods. Yes, they do home products. Yes, they do apparel and retail. The thing that makes it department store and not any of those other things is the fact that they do it all in one roof. It's one big store where you can go for anything and everything you could ever need. So, what is actually in a department store? Usually, a department store, well, before we even get to a department store, think about your grocery store. And I'm not saying if you live in New York City, we're not talking about the bodega down at the corner here. No, we're talking the parking lot is huge, the store itself is huger, everything is big. We're talking those big grocery stores. Think not Trader Joe's, think Vons, think Ralph's, think Costco. Although Costco's even on the bigger end there. Take how big you think those stores are and then add 9 of them together. On average, a grocery store is about 30,000 square feet. On average, a department store is about 260,000 square feet. 250,000 square feet under one giant, most likely plain roof. These department stores are huge buildings that have different sections, or as they're known, departments, that are dedicated to different types of goods. This is exactly where the name department store comes from. These goods, of course, are going to be clothing, just basic clothing. But at the same time, they're going to have luxury clothing, high-end, super expensive clothing. They're going to have your cheap jewelry that you're going to buy as a prop. They're also going to have your diamonds and your emeralds and your tens of thousands of dollar rings. They're then going to have food. They're going to have groceries, freezers, fridges, but also a lot of just stuff that you'd put in your pantry. Lots of pantry goods. Usually very big quantities of it too. These department stores have everything. Some of them, they'll even sell tires. They'll sell plants. I've seen some department stores, and I kid you not, mostly in Canada though, they sell cars. Department stores have it all. Things to build your home, things to improve your home, and things to fill your home, both closet and pantry. But what I really want to talk about here is not what's in a department store. Instead, I want to talk about what a department store's revenue looks like. How do they make money? Because that's an interesting topic. Before we get into the dollars and cents of it, let's first talk about this title, the cyclicality of a cyclical sector. Thanks. This is brought to you by the redundant department of redundancy. It seems like it's a silly title, but it makes sense when we break it down. Consumer discretionary, our ticker symbol XLY, is sometimes called, if you look, for example, on FinViz, you're not going to see, there's no consumer discretionary. There's no consumer staples. Instead, what we have is consumer cyclical and consumer defensive. Defensive is staples, while consumer cyclical is discretionary. The easiest way that you can think about what would fall into cyclical is this. When you're looking at it in the store, you look at it and say, I want that. That usually is going to be a cyclical thing. Instead of, oh, I need that. That's typically staples. Things that you can't go without. Things like your milk, sugar. Most things that go into your pantry are going to fall into staples goods. But then toilet paper, paper towels, things like that as well fall into staples goods. Cyclical is going to be your higher end clothing and the things that, you got a nice Christmas bonus, so let's go spend it on a bunch of things for you or for your family. Those are usually going to be the cyclical goods. To put it in another way, these are usually the goods that you're going to buy when you have extra spending money. So if we take it outside of the context of Juan de los Palotes and bring it into the context of the U.S. market and the U.S. and global economy, cyclical industries and, consumer cyclical has its name for a reason, are, cyclical. They'll bounce up and down depending on how the market's doing. If the market is doing very well, people are making a lot of money, people are saying, all right, it's time to start throwing that money around a little bit, go on a vacation, treat myself to a nice dinner. That is usually going to come in a strong economy. In a very good economy, spending for cyclical industries will go up a lot. Whereas in worse economies, you're going to see spending for consumer cyclical goods plummet. You're not thinking about buying that new Mercedes-Benz when you're thinking about how much your electricity bill is going to be for the month. There's certain costs that you're going to have. So when things are getting expensive, you have to pay a lot for gas, things like that, you're going to be a lot less inclined to say, you know what, I want to go and buy that nice sports car. Or, hey, it's now time to go outside and let's go remodel the backyard. Instead, you're going to look at saving money. So department stores have a lot of these trends as well. When people are spending less money, they're going to make less money. But when people have a lot more money to spend, department stores are like Disneyland, except you don't pay to get in, you pay to get out. You can go in and you can spend and spend and spend. You can buy your groceries. You could also probably buy your dog in the back. These stores have it all. All one place too. So you can go in, buy the things you came in for, and buy the things you didn't. My dad always says about Costco, he loves Costco, but they have the world's most expensive batteries. You go in wanting to buy $20 worth of batteries and you leave spending $400 on things that you never knew you wanted and probably didn't want or need, but you bought them anyway because it was there and hey, it was on a sale. That's how consumer cyclical industries work. In department stores, they don't just have this. They don't just have the cyclical economic cycle. They have the calendars as well. Seasonality is also a type of cycle that strongly affects department stores. I can tell you all about it, or instead, let's just go and take a look at a graph, shall we? This is not a heartbeat. This is not an EKG. This is the amount of money that is spent in retail. Keep in mind, department stores oftentimes will fall under retail. So when we're looking at retail sales, we're looking at how much did people spend in stores, both in this case, both online and department stores. But sadly, I couldn't find only physical stores. This is total, but we'll get to the online side of things in a little bit. But let's look at what we have here. Let's start here in March of 2017, around this 11 billion mark. About the entire year, we're sitting around 11, maybe down to 10.9 and up to $12 billion in spending. And then it's the most spendiest season of all. November and December happens. Spending goes through the roof. Everyone buys their Black Friday deals. Everyone buys their Christmas presents. And you get to the end of the holidays. I don't want to spend any more money. Spending tanks. January and February, people stop spending. They start saving a little bit more because they just burned probably a little bit more money than they wanted to in the holidays. And then by March, it bounces back. Things continue. And this cycle is annual. January and February are low. Throughout the year, spending is pretty normal. Holidays happen, spending spikes. Holidays go by, people stop spending, so on and so forth. There's a little bit of a trend here. But it's interesting to notice this trend is slowly, or I'll go this way, is slowly going down. Spending is going down, little bit by little bit by little bit. That's what's very interesting about this. November and December are huge months with about 50% higher sales in November and 100% higher sales in December compared to the average month. And a lot of this is due to holidays like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but also religious holidays such as, well, Thanksgiving's not a religious holiday, but bear with me, Christmas, Hanukkah, and many other holidays where gift giving is part of the celebration and part of the tradition. Then, once we've burned all of our money, and probably a little bit more, on holiday gifts or holiday dinners, spending tanks, and usually January and February people save their money a little bit. It's also the colder months, so people probably aren't going out as much, socializing as much. They're just hanging inside and saving. But again, I mentioned before that those numbers we were looking at was just for all retail. It wasn't stores versus online. Or some of the other terms they're used is brick and mortar versus online, or retail versus e-tail. So I want to talk here about e-tail a little bit. We are all right now on YouTube. We all are using the internet, which means we all have an internet connection, which means we all probably have bought one or two things online. As we continue to use technology more and more and more to make our lives easier, Many consumers have moved away from retail stores entirely and instead have moved online to online e-tail stores. These online stores offer us many of the same products that we may buy in a department store, but give us some added benefits as well. So I really want to quickly talk about this because when we're talking about department stores, I don't want to just talk about the big 5 department stores here. I want to cover it all. And when we're talking about an industry, one of the biggest things that we should talk about is what's challenging it? What is giving it a run for its money? Because for department stores, that's what it really is. They fight consumer spending, but also they fight the online stores that have the same kind of we do it all but in one place, but online, without having to leave your home. So with that said, let me talk a little bit here about the pros, the good things, when it comes to online retail or e-tail. First and foremost, you got more options. You can go online, and through Google Shopping, you can find every single store in the world that sells an Xbox One. You can also go online and you can find every store that sells King Arthur flour. You can go online and search the name of a product and see every place that it's sold. And because there's a lot more competition, you're not going to one department store where they've got you there because they had a sale and now all of a sudden you want to buy a bunch of other things. No. Here, when you're looking online, you're going to be looking at many different stores, but for one product. So when it's very easy to just, well, let me do this. I didn't even click anything. I'm on all. And here's the Microsoft Xbox One. I can buy it from Newegg, eBay, J&L, shopping.com, electroshop.com. Oh, hey, look at this. It's a giant spreadsheet of where I can buy the Xbox from, how much it is, and hey, some of them even have free shipping. That is how easy it is when you're shopping online to compare prices. Then there's other websites like Camel, and the such that will let you compare prices over time. So you can say, all right, well, is now the best time for me to buy this? I will have a lot more about this when I have my Black Friday webinar. But for today, I'm just going to stay with this. When there's a lot more competition between prices, everyone will start to sell at a similar price. But that price is usually a lot lower than what you might find in a store. Then another thing that we are all probably used to, thank you Amazon for setting the new industry standard. Whether that industry standard is a good thing or not, that's not something I'm going to cover. But these days, we expect most deliveries for our products to be 1 to 2 day shipping. And for that luxury of 1 to 2 day shipping, we used to pay $20 or $30, whereas today it's free. Amazon will ship most products to most places within 1 or 2 days for free. So we've gotten used to that fast delivery for online service or for online purchases. The next one is reviews. How many times have you gone to look at a product, or you didn't know what brand product you wanted, and you just went online and you just said, inflatable river raft? I don't know the first thing about inflatable river rafts. It was just the first 3 words that came to my mind. But you want to know what? 118 people did know something about this river raft, and they said, we give it 4 stars. How about this one? Ooh, it's a little bit more expensive, but 5 stars. Reviews are valuable. They are an important part of the online purchasing process because it gives us so much information about other people that really bought this thing or might not have bought it. Again, I can do an entire other video on reviews and how some reviews are fake and how some companies use fake reviews, but again, not the point of today. The other one is the related products section. When you're looking to buy something for your house, let's say you want to buy a new television, they're going to also suggest to you some new speakers to go with that television. They're going to suggest to you a nice new couch to sit on to watch that TV. They're going to suggest a way of sticking that TV to your wall. When you're in a store, they can't do that. It's just a big box that says the price and what's in the price, or what do you get for that price. So this is something that is strictly e-tail. The ability to say, all right, you're buying this, well, you might want to buy this, this, and that as well. Another one is coupons. I'm not going to talk too much about this one because there are tons of places online that say they handle coupons for you, but I've never found one that works well. But most stores have coupons. These coupons give you money off a product, and saving money is always a good thing, right? So coupons are a lot easier to find online. When you go into the store, the last thing they're going to say is, yeah, here's the coupon for the thing you were about to pay full price for anyway. But the biggest benefit here is you get all of these pros sitting at home. I just showed you all of this on a webinar. I can do this for my own purchases as well. Any day of the week, any time of the week. If it's 11 o'clock on a Friday night and I'm looking at some weird purchases, maybe I want to buy a big beanbag chair, maybe a lava lamp. I can buy them at 11 o'clock at night. Department stores, they close around 8 to 9. Online stores never close. So you can go purchasing stuff at whatever time, whenever day you want. And again, you can do this all from home, and you don't even need to live close to a department store to do it. Now, what are the drawbacks? Because again, I'm not talking today about e-tail. I'm talking today about department stores. So why am I telling you all of the reasons that e-tail is better than department stores? There's got to be something, right? There is. Quite a bit, actually. For clothing, for things that are personal fit, things like rings, things like necklaces, things like clothing, things like bags, especially shoes. I wish that I could buy shoes online, but every time I've bought a pair of shoes online, I never like them. They never fit right. And point number 2, returning them's a pain. If you buy something online and you don't like it, returning it is an absolute pain in the butt. All right, now I already threw away and recycled the box last week, so I need to go buy a box to put it in. I need to print out this packing slip. The stupid printer doesn't work. It never works. Why do printers never work? I've got to go to Staples to print out the shipping label. Then I've got to get a packing slip. It's annoying. It's an absolute pain, and it gives you a real appreciation for the department stores and things like Costco, that you just bring them whatever it is, and you say, hey, I don't like it. It doesn't work. You don't need the box. You might need the receipt. These days, might not even need the receipt. And they're just like, cool, we'll take that off your hands. Here's store credit, or here's your payment back. Online stores, it's a little bit trickier. The other thing is, yeah, Amazon and other companies will give you 1 to 2 day shipping, but shipping still takes time. What if I want it right now? What if I'm working on a project? In fact, the computer that I'm doing this live stream from, I built this computer myself. I waited 2.5 weeks for all of the parts for the computer to come in. I went to go build the computer. I forgot to buy the case. I bought over $2,000 worth of parts to put in this computer, and I forgot to buy the case to put it all in. So instead of waiting 4 to 5 more days, because Amazon doesn't really stock this stuff well, instead I went down to Fry's and bought a case and had my computer built that afternoon. So shipping takes time, and sometimes you don't want to wait. Sometimes you want to just have whatever it is right now. So department stores, retail, very good for that. You buy it right now and you can bring it home with you that second. The other thing is, when's the last time that you went clothing shopping online and saw a discount rack? I know some websites might have the sale section, but it's not as satisfying as going to a place like Nordstrom Rack and just looking. I don't ever want to buy half this stuff, but you know what? This shirt I got from a discount rack. I love it. It's fun to wear. It's comfy. You don't have that same ability to go to a discount rack and be like, the material of this shirt is very nice online. Maybe one day we'll be able to reach out and touch things on a computer, but not today. So there's no discount section. Or if there is, it's not the same experience as being able to go into a store, touch the clothing, try on the clothing, and see how it feels and how it fits. Then I'm going to, first off, we can't think about Amazon. Amazon is literally the online department store these days. So looking beyond Amazon, few companies or stores online have everything in one place. Few stores allow you to buy your clothing, your furniture, and cat food all in the exact same place. Department stores do. You can go to a single department store and buy absolutely anything and everything you could need. Then, even these department stores have started to get with the times a little bit. They will allow you the option to what's called buy online, pick up in store. And it's pretty self-explanatory. You pay online, you pick out what you want, but instead of having to wait for it to be shipped, you go right down to the store, you pick it up, you already paid, and you just leave. It's great. It's really fast, really convenient. Again, you don't get to try on clothing. Like, I would not do that for clothing, but I did it for groceries. I did it for cat food. I did it for many just household things that I don't need to try on. I don't need to feel the material of a paper towel roll. I'm just going to order the paper towel roll, pick it up, and be like, cool. It wipes up messes, and I can dry my hands with it. It does its job. So all of that is why department stores are still a thing. Now, I want to bring us back really quickly to this graph, this cyclicality of department stores. And I want to show you something. This graph ended, and I did this on purpose, by the way. This graph ended at the end of 2019. Why did I do that? Because that was 2019. What about 2020? Because 2020 brought with it some, what's the right word for this? Challenges for the retail and department store industries. There was some world events that happened in 2020 that caused consumer spending, and especially in-person department store spending, to plummet. And even after things calmed down a little bit and we got into the holiday season of last year, we're talking October and November, the amount of sales was laughably lower than it has been in previous years. So now let's go back to that graph we had before, but we're going to add in 2020. So here was before 2020. And here it is after. We still see, so here was the peak of 2017, 2018, 2019. Right here, that was the really, like, everything shut down month and people basically didn't leave their houses. We hit less than $6 billion, which is half of a normal month and almost a quarter of the highs, or I guess a third of the highs that we get in November and December. Just 6 billion. Just 6 billion. Funny idea, right? But it recovered pretty quickly. It was still about $2 billion lower than it usually is. But the holiday spike is where you really see the impact that 2020 had on retail and on department stores. We went from 20.4 to 19 to 18.3 to 14. Our November was comparable to most average months before. Most average Augusts before. And our December spike, that really big best month of the year for retail, didn't even make it to the 2017 and 2018 Novembers. So that's pretty clear. That's pretty clear that there's one thing that department stores rely on, and it's people. When a large part of the value of a department store is that we have everything in one place, but people aren't going outside. People are buying things online or are doing the buy online, pick up in store. These businesses will start to suffer heavily. In addition to people just not wanting to go out as much, laws and regulations limited how many people can gather in indoor spaces, further decreasing the amount of revenue generated by department stores in 2020. So while this department store spending went down, online spending went up. So to show this a little bit more clearly, and I promise this is the last graph of the presentation, so if you don't like staring at graphs, bear with me for the next 2 minutes, and then you won't need to look at them anymore. But this graph really shows something clear about what's happened in the past year. Remember how before I was talking about those numbers we were seeing were overall retail sales. This graph gives some more information to that. The percentage that you see on the left is how much of that revenue is generated from online sales. Back in 2010, about 4% was generated from online sales. And it was a very, very, very gradual increase. Like, that is a straight line. That is not, we're taken off to the moon. It's not like the chart of Bitcoin right now. It's a straight line. 2020 hits. Everyone gets thrown into lockdowns. We went from about 11.8% to 16% instantly. And then it dropped back down, but not instantly. People still are buying well over what that line should be at. If we expected this line to continue going, we would be just about right here, just below the 12.5% line. We're still sitting around 13.5 to 14%, and that's even with a decline. We hit 16% because of people not being able to go out, people being able to travel, or people just wanting to have things delivered. I did. I got a ton of stuff delivered. I even got groceries delivered sometimes. So this is a very clear illustration of what 2020 did to retail. Not only did spending go down significantly, but department store spending especially went down because we see so much of that money going over to online stores. So, did e-tail kill the retail? Did it? Well, after after restrictions lifted, after things started to open up, people started to get vaccines and life started to return to a little bit closer of normal or closer to normal. Consumers immediately started going back to their department stores. And not only that, they didn't just start going back. They flooded those stores, all right? We're talking huge increases. So to take a look at that a little bit more clearly, I want to talk about some earnings reports. For those that might not be familiar, publicly traded companies 4 times a year are required to share information about their company. And two of the metrics, or two of the things they tell us, are earnings per share. So, per share that the company has, how much earnings did they make? And then revenue, which is just how much profit did they make? So let's take a look, because we are not just going to look here at the revenue and the earnings numbers. Instead, there are people called analysts that they're experts in mathematics and statistics and forecasting. They try and tell us what to expect. So the best analyst is going to be as close to the real numbers as possible. So when a company outperforms analysts, that's not just saying they improved, that's saying they did better than everyone expected. So all of the numbers we're about to look at are compared to the analyst estimate, not just compared to last year. Compared to last year, most of these are well over 1,000% increase. All we're going to look at is compared to what the analysts expected, how well did retail companies, and more specifically, department store companies, do? So, Kohl's in quarter two. All of these are quarter two earnings, by the way. We don't have quarter three yet. Kohl's beat its earnings per share estimates by 96% and beat revenue by 5.9%. Also, this will double as the what are those 5 companies that I was mentioning before that are in the department stores. So if you want, feel free to write these ones down, but we'll also go over them here in a little bit because I made a lovely, handy custom matrix for us to look at. So again, Kohl's, 96.2%. Revenue, 5.9. Nordstrom, ticker symbol JWN, beat earnings estimates by 65.5% and revenue by 9.85%. Macy's beat earnings per share by a small margin of 605.6%. Literally 6 times higher than what analysts expected. Then they beat revenue by 12.86. Dillard's beat earnings per share estimates by about 260% and revenue by about 25%. And then the last one that you might not be familiar with, it's not in the US, but it is tradable on the major US exchanges. Companhia Brasileira, CBD, missed their earnings estimates by 31%, but beat revenue by 49.5%. And this was just quarter two. Quarter one saw similar changes, with many of these companies outperforming their earnings estimates by double, or in some cases even larger. So now, why are we talking about department stores today? What is the reason? And it's not just because I wanted to show you a bunch of pretty graphs, all right? We're talking about department stores today because next week I'm covering Halloween. And in the future weeks, I want to cover consumerism. But before we cover consumerism and consumer spending, I wanted to talk about one of the biggest players in consumer spending, department stores. Because department stores, they might not specialize in any one holiday, but I'll tell you what, I would guess the majority of the people in my neighborhood, your neighborhood, and probably even in this webinar are going to do some or most of their holiday shopping at a department store. So again, next week is Halloween, high consumer staples spending. Then after that, we get into the holiday season with consumer and religious events galore. So I wanted us to have this moment right now to talk a little bit about department stores because they are a huge influence and a huge part of our consumer society. And because of what happened during quarantine, they lost a lot of ground. E-tail picked up a lot of that. But consumer spending as a whole went down. So I want us to be able to look going into the holidays at consumer spending together and see what happens to this graph. I want to see, do we go back up? How much do we go back up? Because even before quarantine, there was still this gradual downtrend. Like we would have expected last year, 2020, to be around 17.4 billion. Are we going to continue that trend, and are we going to see this year be about 16.5, 16.6 billion? Or are department stores going to make a comeback? I don't know. And no one knows. So we'll get to find that out together. But before we can talk about that, we needed to know what's happened in the past. And the other reason is simply this. Department stores right now are a leading industry. If we were to go over here and look at FinViz, it is up among the top 5 sectors, top 5 industries for one-day performance. The number 1 in terms of 1-week performance. And in the top, where is it? Oh, it was here before. It was among the top 10 for 1-month performance, but seems to have disappeared from us. But again, we're looking here at the beginning of the crazy period, the beginning of the surge of attention, but also revenue that will be going through department stores and retail stores in the next 2 months. So before we got into the craziness of it, I wanted us to have this opportunity to talk about the big players in the retail space. Looking beyond just these 5 companies, I've tried to say over and over, department stores are a small part of a bigger industry, retail. So while there are not any strict department store ETFs, there are some retail ETFs that offer exposure to department store companies. Many of these, and by many I mean most of these, have holdings in Macy's and in these other department store companies. So these are going to include XRT, which is State Street Spider's S&P Retail ETF. Van Eck has RTH. First Trust NASDAQ has FTXD, so this is going to be only NASDAQ companies for retail. And then focusing on the luxury goods side of things, we have LUXE from Emle. So that brings us now to the takeaways. Department stores are huge stores, both in physical but also in monetary value of what they provide us with so many different products and services under one roof. These stores all belong to the consumer discretionary ETF, or to the consumer discretionary industry, but they're not just cyclical based on economy, they're also cyclical based on calendar year. November and December holidays, what's coming up in a couple of weeks and months. leads to significant spending in these stores. And while 2020 was a troublesome year for these stores because of limits on capacity and also less consumer spending overall, we saw new lows for this entire industry. But they've bounced back. Many of these department stores have been able to survive the 2020 winter and recovered quickly, and have since, I wouldn't even say outperformed, destroyed analyst estimates over and over and over. So as we move into the holidays, but also as we move into Q3 earnings season, keep a close eye on these companies. Keep a close eye on the earnings reports, as that will continue to tell us how much of this recovery is sustained and how far they'll be able to grow, as that will give us a more real-time look, a much more today way of looking at what is consumer spending really doing. It's a hard number to quantify, and it's something that even the data that I have is still the newest stuff on that chart that we looked at is May. So yeah, Q3 is about 6 weeks old, but that still is very recent data. And it's going to give us a lot of cool information to look at when we're trying to say, what does 2021 consumer spending look like? It's a crazy time right now. A lot of people are still don't have a job. But despite that, the number of job openings continues to outpace the number of jobless. So does that mean the consumer spending is going to be low? I don't know. And that's going to be what's interesting to follow, is what does the 2021 holiday season look like? Are people going to be spending a lot more, spending a lot less, spending it online, spending it in department stores? Only time will tell, and it's usually funny. You think about things and you always say, well, put your money where your mouth is. Well, as a consumer, you will. Whether you realize it or not, you spending money is putting your money where not even your mouth is, just where your thoughts are. So it'll be interesting to see where all of this ends up. And we'll be along for the ride alongside you to continue keeping an eye on it. So that now brings us to the last thing I want to share with you all. There are many people that have recently joined us for Sectors Made Simple. So first off, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for being here with us. I want to use this as an opportunity to highlight one of the amazing tools that we offer through Sectors Made Simple. On our website, which is where you find the matrix, dash.sectorsmadesimple.com, we offer the relative strength matrix, your one-stop shop for seeing sector rotation in one easy picture. But if you click on the menu up hidden by my face and click on custom matrix right there, you'll get brought to this. And yours is not going to have a bunch of stuff here. Instead, you're going to have this button to say create matrix. And you can build a matrix out of any choices of stocks you want, up to 7 from a list of over 10,000. When we do some subsector spotlights, I like to use these custom matrices as a way of showing today who the leaders out of the group really are. So I ran a custom matrix for us, looking at the 5 companies that we had. So here is, I don't know why, I can never remember JWN. Kohl's is KSS, Macy's is M, XRT is going to be the retail Spider ETF, XLY is discretionary, DDS is going to be the, I didn't add the Brazilian one by the way. DDS is going to be Dillard's, and then JWN is going to be, if my brain stops doing this to me. Of course, Nordstrom. So again, we have Dillard's, Nordstrom, Kohl's, Macy's, the S&P 500 itself, discretionary, as well as the retail ETF. And after a couple of minutes of running, you'll get the ability to see that custom matrix. So here it is. Right now, we have two leaders, let's say. Well, first off, let's take a look at this. Right here in the middle of the pack, we have our three ETFs. We have the entire discretionary sector with a total count of 6, XRT, which is the retail ETF, with 5, and SPY with 5. And then we have two companies above and below. We have Nordstrom and Kohl's down at the bottom with low relative strengths. Kohl's with almost no relative strength. And then above, we have two companies that are performing extremely well. Because we have 7 companies, the highest score we can get is 6 in the positive trend, 6 in the X count, for a total of 12. Remember, X count is short-term strength. Our short-term leader right now is going to be Dillard's with a total count of 9. But long-term, our leader is Macy's with a positive trend of 6 and a total count of 10. So these two companies are vying for leadership within their group. One holding on to that long-term leadership, while another is gaining short-term leadership. And if we looked compared to 1 week ago, we would see that Dillard's has gained 3 in its X count. So it went from 2, 3, and 5 to a total of 3, 6, and 9 in 1 week. Meanwhile, Macy's has picked up 1 extra X count to go from 6, 3, and 9 to 6, 4, and 10. So right now, there's two very interesting stocks to follow, Macy's and Dillard's. I'm not going to go into the point and figure charts for today for that. It's not the point of today's webinar. Today is simply looking at this entire industry and talking about consumer spending, both in the late 2010s, what 2020 did to it, and how we're coming out of it into 2021. If this is something that interests you with custom matrices, we have plenty of videos on different custom matrices and how to run them yourself. And again, running custom matrices is completely included with your Sectors Made Simple subscription. So if you have an SMS subscription, go in, create some custom matrices for yourself, and see how these matrices help to make any investment decision, portfolio rebalance, or otherwise simpler. But that's all the time we have for today, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us for another Subsector Spotlight, as we talk a little bit about consumerism, a little bit about economics, and also a little bit about some stocks as well. So thank you all so much for joining us. If you ever have any questions or have any topics that you want to hear me talk about, especially as we move into November, which is going to be all about technology and computers and computer literacy. If there's anything you want to hear us talk about for those, please send us an email. We love to hear your thoughts on what webinars we can provide to you to help you use our tools, the internet, or investments simpler. So, from me, Kira, Cleo, and the rest of the Sectors Made Simple team, thank you all so much for joining us today, and we'll see you all very, very soon. Hope to see you all for Tuesday's webinar with Myra.